Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the chefs for all of your hard work, and we really enjoyed a real flavour of the book there. That really brought the book to life, for me anyway. I never had the privilege of eating at the Heart pop-up restaurant, so it was lovely to have a wee flavour of the food. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the book a little bit. If there could be no videos for social media, but we're hoping to record this ourselves, and hopefully we'll do something with that video ourselves. We at Acker, from the publisher Acker, we're so proud, we're so pleased to be sharing this book with you all. It's a really hard book to describe. It's a food book, it's a cookery book, it's a bilingual book, it's a Hebridean book. It's a practical cookbook that will be in kitchens and people will use in kitchens, but it's also a book that will be on coffee tables in living rooms, I think. It's such a lovely book, a photographic book. But above all, it's Murdo Alec's book. It is his vision, it is his creativity, his imagination. So we're very pleased to be sharing this book with you. To my right, I've got a wee panel of people here, and we're just going to have a wee chat about the book. So immediately to my right is Andrew Wallace, who features in the book. He worked with Murdo Alec in the Heart restaurant, and he now works in Copenhagen. And we're very, very pleased that Andrew came all the way from Copenhagen to be here today. That was really great, so thank you, Andrew, and for your hard work in the kitchen. And then after Andrew, we have Ian McRitchie, Murdo Alec's little brother. And then we have Joe MacDonald, who is a cousin of the family and was involved in the creation of the book as well. And finally, Kathleen, Murdo Alec's big sister, who was very involved in the restaurant and has been a real driving force behind the creation of the book as well. Mentioning Andrew coming all the way from Copenhagen, I mean, some of you have come from Skikkerstad, but some of you have come from afar, and we should mention also Michelle, Murdo Alec's wife, and we're very pleased that Michelle was able to travel here to be with us as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to watch a wee video, and this is just a wee short video giving you a flavour of the book, and it also features Murdo Alec, and we thought it would be really appropriate for the launch of Murdo Alec's book to have Murdo Alec actually speaking about his cooking. So it's a short video. After the video plays, we're just going to have a slideshow of pictures from the book, and we'll just have a wee chat with the panel here. And then perhaps if any of you have questions as well, that would be very welcome. So if we see the wee video first of all. I think my first question will be maybe to Ian and to Kathleen, to tell us a wee bit about Mordualic. And did he always have this flair for cooking when you were growing up? Was he always in the kitchen?
I don't remember ever cooking anything except a storeroom in our bedroom. I shared a bedroom with Mordualic. My half was tidy, his was like Beirut. It was just. I think that probably falls into the kitchen, did it, Kathleen? Later on. Or was he quite tidy?
Yeah, he was very calm.
Very
Always
calm.
calm in the kitchen. There's always a calm kitchen.
Yeah. So I don't know where this love for cooking started really. I think probably when he went to the army, that's when it kicked off properly. He didn't get the chance to cook at home with Lena in the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So he joined the army, and then how did his cooking develop from there? I don't know. Who knows about his career? How did his career develop? So he was cooking in the army. How did he even? He joined the army, but not as a cook. So how did the cooking come into?
He trained as a chef.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, he trained as a chef in the army, and then once he left the army, he was working in restaurants.
Okay. And where was he working? What restaurants did he work in? Can you remember?
Who was he first of all? Michelle.
Carlos Marti's husband's restaurant in Glasgow, the Italian, before he went to army.
Well, Mary was in the crowd in Stornoway for a good
Okay.
while.
Yeah.
When he was in the island here.
Yeah.
But there was a few different places down south. Michelle would know more, I think. The different restaurants. Was the Black Lion, wasn't it?
The Black Lion. I don't know the name of it, but there's one in Cornwall, just before we went to the Black Lion.
Okay.
So a variety of different
Yeah.
Yeah.
places before they started Solar.
Okay. And tell us about Solar. Solar was in Portofness.
It was when that building opened where the breakwater is just now. Mordualic was the first, and then Mordualic and Michelle, they opened up the restaurant Solar there. What year was that, Michelle? Can we remember?
Sorry, Solar.
Was
Was it 2000?
Well, it was later than that, I think.
2007.
2007.
Okay.
So they were there for a few years, and then moved to Stornoway to the Callahan. So they had a place upstairs there,
Okay.
and so they've continued there.
Yeah. Yeah. I did have the pleasure of eating at Solar. I do remember eating at Solar. Yeah. Joe, you'd have known the family growing up. Did you think, oh, there's a chef in the making there when he was?
I was always so bowled over by his mother's ability to
Okay.
make cakes and scones and the road cakes that I never ever thought any other children had any talent. But no, I have to say, I ate in Solar several times, and one of the things I really remember about it is, quite apart from how welcoming Michelle was doing front of house, and Mordualic producing this amazing food. But I always used to take my mother with me. My mother had a pretty poor stomach, and we would have lovely haute cuisine, and he would make mac and cheese for my mother. Just dish it out. That's my
Good mac
memory.
and cheese, though.
Apparently, so she used to eat it with scrap. If I tried to make it, it didn't like. So she's really good. Worked at Solar.
Yes, I did some shifts, mostly at the weekends. And I first started out because I was needing someone to kind of scrub the muscles or something like that. Then it kind of progressed, and
Yeah.
progressed like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So would you say trained you?
Yeah, everything I know, he taught me.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And my mum.
Yeah. And what about Andrew? How did you come to meet Mordualic and come into the equation?
The equation. I got into cooking quite late. I didn't start cooking until I was 27, and he was the first employed me as a cook. So yeah, that would always mean a lot. And he was only the first person to give me a chance. I come from Suffolk, in a small town. I was trying to get my way into kitchens, but no one was replying to my emails. And then lucky enough, I think he just started not long at the Black Lion, and they was doing a meet and greet the chef. And I was supposed to be going for dinner for my birthday. The Black Lion is what's the best way to describe it?
A country club.
The country pub, but it's quite high end. There's always nice cars parked outside.
Yeah.
I never grew up eating in nice restaurants, so I never had a taste of them before I met Modo. So I'd had that booked for my birthday. Me and my friend went for breakfast the week before just to see if we could afford what we was like going to go in for the next week. So we went and had breakfast just to make sure we wasn't going a bit too over our stations. And my friend, lucky enough, saw that they were doing a meet and greet the chef. Said we should go to that. Lucky enough, we were the only 2 people that turned up, which gave us 1 hour for my mate to tell Murdo how much I wanted to be a cook.
Okay.
I just nodded in the background saying, yeah, that's good. And I'm lucky enough, Murdo turned around and said, if you really want to try it, you can come one Saturday. I went the following Saturday for dinner, and the next Saturday I started doing Saturdays in June, every Saturday until he gave me a job in October. And that was the beginning of our journey.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
how it started with me.
And where do you work now, Andrew?
I work in a bakery in Copenhagen. I've been for the last 2 years. Well, I've been in Copenhagen the last 6 years, but yeah.
But you're coming back to the UK?
I'm coming back to the UK in January
Okay.
to move to Cornwall.
Okay.
Yeah, me and Mel only spent a very short period of time together. It was only 10 months that we worked together in the Black Lion.
Okay.
Which was nice, but in that period of time, we got to know each other quite well. He definitely spoke about the island in different ways. He spoke about plenty of different weird ingredients and creatures that lived up on the island, and I was just touching on it with Kathleen yesterday. I was actually quite jealous, because he'd be talking about this with another Scottish boy, Paul, and Michelle's brother Stuart, because he used to work at Sula, I believe, at one point, and then they'd be talking about going out and shooting rabbits and fishing and this and that. And I'd always be annoyed in my head that I hadn't had that chance to do that with him, and then lucky enough the pop-ups come around.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't go out shooting rabbits, but we got to cook some food and eat kuka at Venus as well. So I got introduced to kukas, bannocks, sybos.
So you were
different words.
introduced to Guka.
I was introduced to kuka.
What did you make of Guka?
Honest answer now.
Honest answer. I was looking forward to it because Gordon Ramsay not come and eat it, and I remember people telling me Gordon Ramsay's even been to the island and eaten it. I remember walking in the house and the smell of the house smelled very fishy and sort of a little bit weird. And then not the house, but the very nice house. But yeah, I just remember it boiling away, and yeah, I remember it was actually delicious.
Oh.
And I remember, I believe it was Rena who told me, or maybe Murdo was winding me up to get me to eat in between the toes of the So I was told to taste that, and I tasted it, and it was delicious. We had it with potatoes, and I'll forever remember that. It was very nice, flubbery skin, but apart from that, yeah, it was definitely delicious and worth the wait. But
And this is
I do
in the
remember.
Woods.
Yeah, right. Have you never had it?
Well, I must admit, to my shame, here in Ness, I've never had Guka.
Oh,
Never had a Guka.
oh,
So.
yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, that can you all hear up at the back and everything? Are you able to hear? Okay. That brings us to the Haar pop-ups. How did Haar come about? So I don't know, does Andrew, Kathleen know about this? How did the whole Haar thing come to be?
We were trying to discuss this. I don't know if you have a better answer than me, but I just don't really completely remember the moment he approached me to say to do it. But I mean, again, from that.
But you were working for him at the time, were you? Or
No. I mean, the first year was 2015. Is that right?
Yeah.
The first pop-up.
Yeah, he kind of told me that he was planning on doing it, and then that you were going to be working with him, and you know that we would do it together, and it just came from that.
And where did the Haar? Where did you cook? What locations did you
So
have?
2015 we cooked in Bjarnen, and we cooked here in the old
And how does that even work? You have to put everything in a van and just.
Exactly. Yeah, put everything in the van. But there was one previous to that. Gordon's were there. We done one like trial run at Murdo's house. I was working in London at the time, and again, we didn't have the biggest kitchen, but we done a pre-test for around 6 people, which was nice. Then we took it on the road, packed up the van, packed up what felt like 1,000,001 plates, 1,000,001 knives and forks, and made the long journey from Suffolk up to the island, stopping at Ian's on the way in Edinburgh, and then getting the ferry over. But yeah, the pop-up restaurant thing is quite popular now in the industry, but it is, yeah, it's quite a lot because you don't sort of really realise the space you're going to work in until you get there.
Mm.
You don't realise what appliances are in the kitchen until you get there, and you can only bring so much up with you. But there's definitely a lot of challenges when you sort of try getting 3 people in the kitchen to
Yeah.
prep all the food
Yeah.
and things for it. But,
And I believe you never ate at her, Ian, did you?
No, I was training for the ministry at the time, so that's why you stopped in Edinburgh. You were.
yeah.
So wherever they were, I just didn't happen to be there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I ate in Solar, but never in Haar.
Yeah. Joe, did you ever have the pleasure of her eating at her?
No, because by the time I applied for a ticket, they were all gone.
Yeah.
I think it sold out within about 10 minutes
Yeah.
of being advertised.
Yeah.
So thankfully, no. But I'm really pleased to have tastes of the food
Yeah.
tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And what about the name Har? Who came up with was it Mordwalik himself, and where did the name Har come from? Does anyone know or remember?
Mordwalik, like the three of us, we all love Skillerstad. We were brought up in Stornoway. We won't broadcast that too loudly. So we would have a week about at my granny and Shen's in Skillerstad every summer.
Okay.
And they had a wee caravan on the moor where the Addies are, and we would go out on a Tuesday, come back on a Thursday, say Kathleen would do that, and then I would do it the next week, and Mordwalik would do it the next week. So Skillerstad was very much in our blood.
Yeah.
We just loved the place, and Mordwalik loved the place. The strange thing about Skillerstad is, I don't know if anyone's ever noticed this, you can have a beautiful day throughout the island, blaring sunshine, but yet there's this Har in Skillerstad. And you can't see a thing, just kind of thick with fog. And you have to leave Skillerstad just to get the sunshine. But so I think it's probably something to do with that. You know, the uniqueness of it to Skillerstad. Har is very much an East Coast thing, but it makes its way to the West Coast as well.
You were in the Acker office the other day, and you were telling a story about how Mordwalik became a private chef.
Oh yes.
Do you remember how tell us how that came about?
So Mordwalik was, Kathleen and Andrew will know more about this, but he was, of course, chefing in restaurants, and he had a problem with his back, really sore back. So he didn't want to be working the unsociable hours anymore, and so he applied for a job in a house to be the chef in the house. He applied, he didn't know who it was, and of course there was a lot of people applying for this job. And it was basically, I suppose, like a cook-off. So there would be a few people cooking and then brought back to cook again, and then brought back again and again, and you know, and the numbers would be whittled down to the last, 2 or 3.
Okay.
Mordwalik liked to preach on the Lord's Day on Sunday, and he was involved with prison ministry as well, so he wanted Sunday off, if possible. So he made this clear to the PA that, they were saying, well, they are interested in you as the numbers were getting lower, but he said, well, I'd quite like to have Sunday off, if possible. And she said, well, forget it, because that's obviously the family's day for entertaining. And that was fine. Mordwalik, he had a strong faith. I'm sure we'll come on to that. But he said, well, the Lord will provide something else. Anyway, I think a few days later, Michelle will know the timeline better, but the phone went, and this was a PA. This is what Mordwalik said to me. The PA said, well, your God must be looking after you, because not only do the family want to employ you, but they'll give you Sunday off, which they did. I mean, he would never see them stuck if they were needing to eat, you know, but generally he was able to have that Sunday off. Enjoy going to church with Gordon there in Suffolk. So that was amazing. And that employer, I don't know if I'm allowed to say their name, Michelle, am I? Everybody knows. Yeah, Mr. and Mrs. Vaughan, Claudia Schiffer and Matthew Vaughan, he's famous for directing movies. I'm talking about Guga. He prepared Guga for them. Imagine. I don't think it's quite in the same way as we would eat it, looking a bit like a coin scurry. But I don't know what he did to the Guga. Maybe Michelle will know, but she liked it because she's of German descent, and they're used to sort of pickled meats and fishes and all that kind of stuff. I don't think he was quite so keen. So the Guga has made its way to the celebrities, believe it or not.
Maybe we should mention the photographs in the book. Catherine, do you want to tell us who the photographers are, and maybe give them a mention? Yeah.
Paul McGinley and Scott Davidson, if they have met from the studio. And
Scott's at the back.
also there's Peter McNally, and then so they, you know, like we actually spoke about this last night, Andrea and I. He had started a WhatsApp group 2 months after he had been diagnosed, and it was called Hardwick, and it's myself and Peter McNally. And he just wanted, he was saying that he was going to do this book, and he just wanted to be kept between the three of us, but he said that he was wanting Paul's photos and Scott's photos and that as well. And he was taking the photos of the food. And so between Paul, Scott, and there's Peter as well, McKinley, and Peter McNally, and ourselves, you know, we took photos, and I think between us all, I think we've captured the beauty of not only the food but the islands. Yeah.
So it was when he became ill, in that case, that he began working on the book.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So do you think that was almost the catalyst for the?
So, yeah.
So it was in 2016, I think, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So Joe, how did your involvement in the book come about? Were you aware? It was just the three of you at the start who were aware of this? When did the wider family, I wonder, become aware of? And how did Joe get involved?
I'm not really quite sure. I think it was over a cup of tea in Queen Anne Farrell's house in Ness that I became aware that there was a partly finished or an unfinished book, notes, pictures, and so on. And I had worked with Archive many years ago, and been involved in creation of 1 or 2 other books. So I just said, if there's anything I can do to help, I'll be happy to do it. And then it just kind of grew from there. Moralik, as we've heard, you know, is passionate about Skirsta and much of Skirsta, quality of Skirsta, and produce from the islands, and the Gaelic and the culture and the traditions and so on. And he had always wanted a strong Gaelic element in the book, so that's really where I was able to help, I think.
Ian, you mentioned earlier Mordalic's faith. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, Mordalik was Christian. I think he became a Christian he was converted the year before I was. His faith was very, very strong, and I think anyone would have seen that if they'd watched his vlogs. A Christian with cancer. I always say if that had been me, I would have been in bed with a duvet over my head. But he was using this as his illness as an opportunity to share the reality what it is to be a Christian. You had a strong faith, especially towards the end. And I think, for me, that was all the more real. I mean, lots could be said about this, but just a wee anecdotal story. The week before he died, myself and himself and Giles went for a walk in Skiversta. A week to the day, we went out past Mary Catherine's house, out to the Peat Road in Skiversta. And, he knew that he didn't have long. He didn't know how long, but he knew that he didn't have long. And I think it's easy to say you have faith when the going is good, but, authentic faith is shown when the going isn't quite so good. And we would have very candid and open conversations at that time. And just about the reality of death. And I said to him, Murdo Alec, a week to the day before he died, I said, Murdo Alec, how would you feel if you were healed today? The cancer was gone. That was it. You could carry on living your life. You know what he said? He said, I would feel cheated. He was so ready to go and be with the Lord. Now that's supernatural, that you don't just make that up. He was so ready to go, and it just brought even more of a reality to his faith, that he could see that this is real, and he was looking forward to it, and he's enjoying it, right now. This is not fantasy fiction; it's real, and he lived that out in a way that touched many people's lives through the vlog. Many non-Christians watched it. He said people would be in touch with him who would never tell us who. The people would be in touch with him that you would never think. Who were questioning what life was all about. He would never break that confidentiality as to who it was. But I think just the realness, the genuineness of his faith struck a chord with so many people. I don't mean to dampen the spirits, but it's real. It's just, it's who he was.
You mentioned earlier that some of the dishes were weird and wonderful. Those were your words. How maybe Andrew and Kathleen have more of an idea of this. How did the creation of the dishes, was it all Murdo Alec's kind of imagination? Was there a lot of trial and error? Were there things that didn't work? How did the creation of these dishes even come about?
They were all Murdo Alec's. They were all Murdo Alec's dishes. We just helped, and everything just involved everything that was heavy in these dishes. Lost dishes, and dishes that we were all familiar with, and we just brought a new dimension to them.
Yeah.
Himself. Yeah.
I think a good dish for that is forgive me for probably saying this wrong, but the
Camp Frog people.
there we go, that's better. Which I really enjoyed, because that was just something I'd never heard of before. And to turn that into a cracker, and with the fish and stuff on top.
Yeah.
I think that's really sums up one of the best dishes that I find looking in the book. That just sums up everything that he was trying to do at that moment in time. And he had a very good vision for that. I remember talking to him on the phone at various points about things, but he had a vision already laid out. He knew the cutlery and everything. He knew the dishes and the direction it was going in. And we talked bits and pieces. How long is the drive? Suffolk to 12 hours, did you just say? 12 hours to get up to. So there was plenty of time in the van with Scottish cookbooks and things like that. I remember discussing things and little bits and pieces like that. And during the week we discussed certain things and just go over things. But
did you ever think there's no way those things will work when you put them together? And
nah, not at all. I had every trust in him, every faith in him. But it was it's very nice. I've worked with him at the back last long enough to understand. To understand.
To understand the weird and the wonderful.
The weird and the wonderful, weird can be good, so don't take that the wrong way. I enjoyed the book.
do you have a favourite? Do you have a favourite dish, do you think, in the book? Maybe it's different for the one preparing the food. I don't know.
We were sort of trying to touch on this last night as well to figure that out. And it's always hard to pick one dish, but I did end up saying the kind of cookie cracker probably just sums
Okay.
up everything in a really nice way for me. That is,
Yeah.
yeah, for me it's that one personally.
Yeah. What about you, Catherine? Do you have a favourite?
Rabbit tag is sort of hanging out, so I think for me,
Yeah.
just have lovely.
Now, Joe, you've maybe not eaten, but you've pored over the book in great detail. Do you have any highlights, do you think?
Only that I won't eat all of it.
Mm.
I've tasted 4 bits of it tonight, and that's made me even keener.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a really strong go at bribing Kathy
Ah.
to make some more.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely lovely food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to have the recipe, you know, but it's another thing to put it together. So thank you for your skill in creating these dishes. What do you hope happens with the book? What are your hopes? And
I think Kathleen touched on this earlier. I think it is a book of recipes. It's a Mordwalik's legacy in a very real way, but it's also a beautiful book that showcases the Hebrides, I think, in terms of pictures and culture. So I think it'll have a wide variety of audiences, from those who are going to try the recipes, to those who maybe just have it on their coffee tables and be flicking through it, to those who are maybe visiting the island and will take it away with them as a memento of the island.
yeah. Well, I hope even the people here today will feel inspired to go home and try, you know, some of these things. You know, the recipes are there, and we might not have the skill of Mordwalik, but you know.
I think we should also say that one of the important things about it is that it is there for a very good cause, which is to raise money for Bethesda and for pancreatic cancer research.
Yeah.
And I think we're very grateful to Arthur for taking it on.
Well, maybe Aker should say we're very grateful that you came to Aker in the first place. I wasn't at Aker, it was Agnes who set the ball rolling on this project, but it's lovely to bring it to fruition now. And the vision, it came to Aker with such a clear vision from Mordwalik. It was so clear, everything about the book. How does it feel? It's like, I think Michelle used the word bittersweet earlier on. How does it feel to have now the book here? It's a bit of a mixed occasion, I suppose.
I mean, personally, I can't help but think, I wish he was here to see it. You know, and what would he say? I think he would have loved it. You know, I think everyone's done a great job of pulling it together. But yeah, I think for me it's bittersweet, definitely. I think just even hearing his voice there, it you know, all kinds of emotions are coming up. But it's more sweet than bitter. Yeah.
Good. I don't know if anyone from the audience has any questions or comments or anything they'd like to say or ask, or if so, feel free, fire away. If anyone would like to say anything. All quiet. Yes, Gordon.
I think Andrew's quite modest about the kitchens he's been in, with some very well-recognised restaurants people respect. What did you? I've been curious about this. You know, spent time with you, but what did you notice about the way he was cooking, and you've seen others? What were you seeing that was special? I don't know. I'm just curious.
I mean, maybe I can't answer the question about someone being special, because I think we're just chefs. At the end of the day, even like celebrity chefs and all this, we just put food on plates. So like, I've never seen that in any way anyone taking up away from motor, but I think it was, for me it was just a friendship that we had, because I only worked with him for a very short period of time. I'd only just stepped into kitchen, so it wasn't like I really had time to really focus on too much, apart from trying to keep up, and trying to make sure hot food was going to the pass, and things like that. But it's the friendship that we carried on after that that was special to me. Is like, yeah, it's not easy making friends as you go through life. You always sort of grow up with your best friends, and that's very easy because they're the people you grew up with. So like, for me anyway, sort of like having friends. I've worked in kitchens for 10 years, and yeah, he's the best friend I had from that. Like, he's the only real friend I made out of that whole period. And for only working together for 10 months and then keeping the connection from then on, I mean, I'm very fortunate that he came into my life at that moment because he gave me the chance. Yeah, so the friendship, I think, is more than standing and thinking how good he was as a chef. He was definitely very good as a chef. I'm not taking anything away from him that, but it was the bond that we had somehow in like being sort of like a little bit opposite from sort of how our careers have gone to that point. It was just I don't know, there was just a bond. Something happened there we met. It was like, it wasn't like we constantly spoke to each other, we constantly text each other, but he was always there. Like, we'd always pick up the phone, and it was we won't bother to start talking for an hour about food and things and stuff like that. So it was that was the special part. If we're talking about special things, it wasn't so much standing and watching them in the kitchen, because up until the pop-ups, it was a very short period of my career. The special thing was the friendship that we had. That's the special thing for me, if that answers. If that answers.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments even? No, well, I think just remains for me to thank a lot of people. Thank you to the family, for it's been such a pleasure working with you and bringing the book to fruition. Kathleen spent quite a few hours with Margaret Dan putting the book together, so thank you to you all. Thank you to the Acker staff, Margaret Dan, Dolina, Leanne and Catherine Margaret, who've all played various roles and will play going forward as well. The photographers in the book we've mentioned, thank you for your contribution. I think we've mentioned them all, Paul McGinley, Scott Davidson, Ali Finlayson and Peter McNally. And Mordowalik, a lot of the pictures are by Mordowalik himself, aren't they? Some of the food pictures. Thanks to the Communichtri for allowing us this lovely location for the official launch of the book, and thank you to all of you for coming and for sharing this occasion with us all. So the book is now available. I think some of you have placed a pre-order, so if you've placed a pre-order, I think some of you may have already received the book in the post, but it's now available for sale. It'll be available local outlets and hopefully in national outlets. And it'll be available here at the Communichtri and also in Stornoway and from Acker, ackerbooks.com. And actually, if you go on the Acker website, you can sign up to our newsletter, which gives you a discount on any purchases that you make. And as Joe mentioned, the royalties from the book are to be shared between Bethesda Hospice in Stornoway and Pancreatic Cancer UK. So I think we'll draw this part of the day really to sorry. Oh yes, there's candles for sale as well. Do you want to tell us about the candles, Kathleen? What the
We decided a couple of years ago to do like candles, so there's one like with like a scent of the sea, and then there's the Mather scent. So we thought for tonight we'd have a limited amount as well for the book launch.
okay.
Sandy paid for them, and as well for
So it just remains for me to thank you all for coming. If you would wish to buy a copy of the book, then we'd certainly be pleased to furnish you with a copy of the book. It's £25, and for me I think it's good value because it's hardback, it's 300 plus pages, and it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I think the participants are willing to sign copies of the book if you would like. Catherine doesn't know why anyone would want her signature in the book, but if you want a signature in the book, then those here are very willing to provide that. So thank you all for coming. And if you're buying a copy of the book, don't feel like you have to go straight away. You can come back here and mingle and flick through the book and compare notes and just enjoy the book. So thank you for coming, and please enjoy.